Imagine the metallic clink of coins being wedged against teeth, the sharp crack of enamel giving way, followed by a guttural choke and then raw, piercing cries of agony. You're in the grand throne hall of the ancient city of Evergreen, in the bitter winter of 1258, once the most prosperous and enlightened metropolis in the world. The man kneeling before you is Emperor Reginald, the supreme ruler of a vast realm, who had reigned for 36 years. He had always believed his position made him invincible, shielded by destiny itself. Now, he's gagging on the very wealth he cherished, with crimson streams mingling with gleaming metal trickling from his lips, as fierce steppe commanders chuckle and force even more coins into his throat. In the adjoining chamber, you catch the thunder of hooves pounding against polished stone floors, mingled with desperate wails that soon fade into eerie silence. His sons had been bundled into thick rugs and trampled beneath the weight of charging horses, one after another. His daughters were hauled away into the night, their cries echoing for hours across the camp. Centuries of royal lineage, the heart of global scholarship, the richest urban center imaginable, all wiped out in just 7 days. The horrors inflicted on this family were details that history long kept hidden, until now. This is Throne and Blade, and this is the unvarnished truth of what unfolded. If these tales of hubris and downfall resonate with you, show your support with a like and subscribe. How does a ruler end up suffocating on his own fortune while his heirs are crushed nearby? It all began with a single, dismissive chuckle. In the autumn of 1257, a formal missive arrived at Emperor Reginald's palace. He read it aloud to his council of advisors, his expression unchanging at first. Then he let out a short, mocking laugh. These wild nomads from the plains had no idea who they were addressing. That fleeting moment of scorn would seal his fate and doom his legacy. Reginald wasn't merely a king, he was the grand sovereign, claiming direct succession from a revered founder of his faith, holding spiritual sway over countless believers across continents, a lineage tracing back 37 generations. Evergreen wasn't just any metropolis. For half a millennium, it had been the pinnacle of human achievement. The Grand Academy housed manuscripts that could occupy scholars for multiple lifetimes. Thinkers journeyed from distant western shores to far eastern trading hubs just to immerse themselves in its collections. With a population exceeding 1 million souls, it stood as the wealthiest place on earth, and Reginald was convinced it was impregnable, protected by its prestige alone. The letter from General Harlan was straightforward. You know the fate of the conquered lands in the east. Yield, or share their destiny. Reginald's chief minister pleaded with him to think again. These invaders aren't mere bandits, they're an unstoppable force. Entire kingdoms with hundreds of thousands of warriors have vanished. Fortresses with walls thicker than a man's height have been reduced to rubble. We can't hope to defeat them in battle, we can only hope to endure them. Reginald dismissed the warning with a casual gesture. We are the eternal realm. We do not bow to wandering horsemen. And then, he did absolutely nothing. No fortifications were reinforced. No funds were allocated for mercenaries or supplies. His vast treasury remained sealed shut. That treasury, vast chambers overflowing with gold bars, silver ingots, precious gems, riches amassed over 800 years that could have hired the mightiest armies known to man. It all gathered dust in darkness while the gathering clouds of war loomed ever closer. 5 months passed, and suddenly 150,000 steppe warriors encircled Evergreen. The city's defenses crumbled swiftly under relentless assault. In desperation, Reginald dispatched an envoy. I offer surrender. Please spare the citizens. Harlan's reply was curt. Come to my encampment in person. Bring your household. After 36 years as unchallenged ruler, Reginald marched out with his sons and daughters, straight into the heart of the enemy camp. Unarmed and trusting, like sheep to the slaughter. What choice would you have made in his place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. On that fateful day in mid February 1258, Emperor Reginald emerged from Evergreen's gates. Accompanying him were his 3 sons, 3 daughters, and over 3,000 courtiers, ministers, learned men, commanders, all without weapons. Steppe guards immediately closed in around the procession, silent and watchful, their eyes betraying nothing. The column wound through the vast enemy camp, past endless ranks of mounted warriors who observed without jeering or attacking, just an ocean of staring faces. Harlan received the emperor in his spacious command pavilion. His opening words were direct and pragmatic, "Reveal the location of your treasury." Reginald paused, then offered, "We are ready to provide generous tribute." "Where is it exactly?" Troops were dispatched immediately. They returned hours later, their expressions revealing the staggering discovery: mountains of gold, endless chests of silver, jewels collected across centuries, fabrics fine enough to outfit entire legions, all untouched, gathering dust while the city's walls fell, while loyal soldiers went without pay, while no preparations were made for defense. Harlan commanded that Reginald be escorted back into Evergreen, now under enemy control, through avenues lined with watchful warriors, past structures already smoldering. They arrived at the imperial vaults. The massive doors stood open. Harlan guided him slowly through chamber after chamber, saying nothing. But the unspoken accusation hung heavy in the air. Why hoard this while your defenses failed? Why lock it away while your troops suffered hunger? Why prioritize metal over the lives of your people? Reginald offered no reply. Harlan nodded gravely. You valued this above your realm, above your warriors, above your own blood. He paused, his voice cold. Now you shall consume it. What followed was chronicled by a respected court historian of the era. Emperor Reginald was forced to his knees amid the piles of wealth he had guarded so jealously as his city fell into chaos. Warriors seized his head, pried his jaws apart, and began stuffing gold coins inside, one after another. He attempted to expel them, but they clamped his mouth shut and continued. His teeth shattered against the unyielding metal. Blood welled up, staining his chin alongside the gleaming coins. They persisted, more coins deeper, until his throat and stomach swelled painfully. Harlan observed impassively. You denied your soldiers wages to amass this. You allowed your fortifications to weaken to safeguard it. Now let it sustain you. Let it be your final meal. Reginald's body convulsed violently, rejecting the intrusion from within. He slumped onto the vault floor, fluids spilling from his mouth in a gruesome mix. Yet they ensured he lingered, because Harlan had summoned the children next. And what awaited them made the gold seem almost kind by comparison. Reginald had 3 sons. The eldest, Prince Edward, 23, groomed from infancy to inherit the throne. He had received the finest education in statecraft, languages, and leadership, constantly reminded of his divine right to rule over millions. He carried himself with the quiet assurance of one born to command, often spending evenings discussing philosophy with visiting scholars or reviewing maps of the empire's vast territories. The middle son, Prince Thomas, 21, was more introspective. He favored the quiet halls of the Grand Academy, poring over treatises on the stars, composing verses about the fleeting nature of power. He had little interest in governance, confiding to close friends that he dreamed of a life devoted to understanding the heavens rather than ruling men. The youngest, Prince Henry, just 14, still retained a boy's wide-eyed trust in his father's omnipotence. He had grown up sheltered in the palace gardens, his greatest worries minor scoldings from tutors. Violence was something from distant stories, death an abstract concept. They were roughly brought into the treasury, wrists bound, faces pale with dread. Seeing their father crumpled in the corner, barely conscious, shattered something in them, the unbreakable figure of authority reduced to a wheezing, broken shell. Prince Edward lunged forward instinctively. "Father!" Guards shoved him back harshly. Reginald's eyes flickered open, but they were vacant, lost. Harlan advanced, appraising the young men like a merchant inspecting goods. "Where is your divine protection now?" A heavy silence descended, the kind that signals the death of all hope. Edward straightened, perhaps drawing on ingrained pride or sheer defiance. "The heavens will avenge this outrage." Harlan showed no amusement, no scorn, just a measured nod, as if acknowledging a predictable response. Then he issued a calm order. The steppe warriors adhered to ancient customs. Royal blood must never stain the earth directly, lest it invite calamity for generations. For executing highborn captives, they employed a refined, bloodless technique. They seized Edward first. At 23 in peak strength, he resisted fiercely, kicking, twisting, shouting defiance. But overwhelming numbers prevailed. They flung him down, unfurled a massive woven rug, and enveloped him layer by layer until he was immobilized, his limbs pinned, breath labored. His muffled pleas echoed faintly, "Father, please, help me!" Reginald remained motionless. "Anyone save us!" The rug was positioned on the marble floor. War horses, massive beasts bred for combat, were led in. Riders urged them forward, thundering over the bundle repeatedly. The sounds were horrific, dull thuds giving way to sharper cracks, wet and profound, as a once vital form yielded. Edward's cries shifted from pleas to raw agony, then to inhuman gasps until silence. Reginald witnessed it all, his heir, the future of his line, obliterated beneath hooves on a palace rug. He made no sound, no movement. Whatever spirit remained had fled. Thomas was next. The scholarly prince offered no resistance, having seen his brother's end. Resignation overtook him. As they wrapped him, he repeated softly, "Father, Father." The hooves fell again. The cries ceased abruptly. Reginald's gaze remained fixed, unseeing. Then Henry, the youngest. No pretense of bravery remained. He sobbed uncontrollably, body shaking, face streaked with tears. "Please, no, I don't want this! Mercy!" He called for his father, for his absent mother, for his lost brothers, for any savior. None came. They bound him even tighter, his slight frame barely disturbing the rug's surface. The horses passed quicker this time. Smaller bones yielded with lesser resistance. When the rugs were unrolled and dragged aside, dark pools spread across the pristine floor. 3 lives extinguished, 3 paths to the future erased. Harlan addressed the emperor, who hadn't stirred. "Your sons are no more. Your bloodline ends today." He glanced toward the entrance. "But we have more to attend. Bring in the daughters." 3 daughters survived. Princess Eleanor, 25, the eldest, sharp-minded, fluent in multiple tongues, author of acclaimed treatises on ethics and governance, whose writings circulated in distant courts. Princess Margaret, 20, gentle and nurturing, often found in the palace gardens, cultivating rare blooms, finding solace in nature's quiet rhythms. Princess Sophia, 12, the cherished youngest, still wearing bracelets that slid loosely on her slender arms. They had been confined separately, spared the sights but not the sounds, the muffled thuds, the fading screams. When guards fetched them, terror was already etched on their faces. Entering the treasury, they confronted the nightmare, their father a hollow shell on the floor, the spreading stains marking their brother's remains. Eleanor froze, her expression turning to stone, as if her soul detached to survive. Margaret crumpled, collapsing to the ground, rocking and whimpering incoherently. Sophia rushed to Reginald, clinging desperately. "Daddy, wake up, please!" His vacant stare offered no comfort. Harlan observed the scene coolly. The males had to perish, potential claimants to power. Necessary, he approached the girls. "But you possess other worth." For noble women under steppe custom, outright execution was rare. Instead, they became prize captives, symbols of total conquest over land, riches, lineage. Eleanor and Margaret were grasped firmly and pulled toward the exit. Eleanor cast one final glance back, at her shattered father, at little Sophia, at the floor's grim evidence. In that shared look with her sister past volumes, shared childhood games in sunlit courtyards, whispered secrets under starlit skies, dreams of independent futures now forever lost. Then they vanished into the camp's vastness. The sisters were distributed among high-ranking officers as rewards, sent to separate corners of the growing empire. They never reunited. A later archival note from distant steppe records mentions 2 Hybern women from the south awarded to a prominent general post, conquest. No further details, no names, fates, or descendants. They simply ceased to appear in records, vanishing like echoes. Sophia, the youngest, Harlan claimed personally. The 12-year-old struggled wildly as he separated her from her father's side, but resistance was futile. He retained her as a living emblem, proof that even the mightiest bloodline could be reshaped to steppe ways. In the ensuing months, he methodically erased her past, forcing adoption of nomadic dress, language, customs, until memories of Evergreen blurred. Years later, a traveler encountered an elderly woman in a remote town, claiming descent from the fallen house. Bent with age, her speech laced with foreign inflections, she recalled little of the palace splendor. Gardens were vague shapes, family faces faded entirely, but that final night remained vivid, the rhythmic thuds under hooves signaling her brother's ends, her sister's fading cries, clinging to an unresponsive father. Harlan's whisper, "You are the final one. Your heritage dies with you." When asked her reflections after decades, she replied simply, he spoke truth. 70 years in exile, bearing silent grief, and ultimately conceding the destroyer's prophecy. Back in the vaults, Reginald yet breathed, ravaged internally by the forced ingestion, spirit crushed by the spectacle. Sons gone, daughters claimed, legacy obliterated. Still, Harlan delayed the end. It needed resonance, a lesson to echo through ages, deterring future defiance. He ordered Reginald bundled like his sons, tight air restricted, but no hooves descended. Instead, a raised wooden dais was erected overhead. Harlan and his officers feasted atop it, directly above the encased emperor, dining, toasting, reveling in triumph while every shift compressed the fabric further, each laugh robbing precious breath. The banquet endured through the night. At dawn, the rug was opened. Reginald's face was discolored, eyes fixed in eternal stare, no visible mark, merely the quiet evidence of gradual asphyxiation. The ruler who scoffed at Harlan's demand, who trusted prestige over preparation, who treasured wealth over welfare, gone, amid his own hoarded riches. 8 centuries of dynasty, 37 rulers, concluded in darkness. The devastation extended far beyond the palace. Evergreen was dismantled methodically, grand structures razed, markets torched. The Grand Academy, repository of unparalleled knowledge, saw its volumes hurled into the river in such volume that waters darkened for days. One survivor, a scholar who concealed himself in a hidden chamber for weeks, emerged to desolation, streets littered with unburied remains, silence broken only by scavenging animals. Yet the intent wasn't mere erasure, it was exemplification. News spread rapidly. To western strongholds within weeks, southern capitals in months. Rulers from distant realms learned the precise consequences of resistance. Many yielded preemptively, offering tribute unprompted. The message resonated: defy, and face familial annihilation. Comply and endure. Evergreen's fall wasn't simple conquest, it was a deliberate warning, inscribed in ruin and loss. Some messages need delivery only once. Recall that initial laugh upon reading Harlan's ultimatum, dismissing the uncivilized threat. It cost him his children, his realm, his existence. One instant of overconfidence, one burst of arrogance, and all vanished. He assumed his title invincible. Assumed providence favored his city. Assumed centuries of glory intimidated warriors. He erred gravely. Prestige halts no hordes. Conviction repels no projectiles. Locked riches purchase no safety. He possessed ample means, wealth, allies, warning, to resist. He simply refused to act. Convinced necessity wouldn't touch him. That's the deepest tragedy, not the invader's brutality, not the rugs or the gold, but a leader so blinded by self-importance that catastrophe arrived unseen until his world crumbled before his eyes. Empires sometimes collapse from external foes, sometimes from internal decay, and some bloodlines end because one man misjudged a missive. This is Throne and Blade, recounting the raw history. If this account lingers with you, like, subscribe, and comment your location below. Such narratives endure only through us, otherwise they fade like evergreens academies, like those lost princesses. Until the next tale. To deepen the narrative, consider the broader human cost. Beyond the royal family, thousands of ordinary citizens, artisans, merchants' families faced similar fates. In one quarter, a master astronomer who had mapped unseen stars was dragged from his observatory, his instruments smashed. In another, a young healer tending the wounded was caught in the chaos, her knowledge of ancient remedies lost forever. Reginald's chief minister, long accused of secret dealings with the invaders out of resentment for past slights, watched silently as events unfolded. Some whispered he had advised inaction to hasten the end of a regime he despised, though proof remained elusive. Among the courtiers who marched out unarmed were elderly poets who had composed odes to the empire's glory. One, frail but defiant, recited verses of resistance as guards led him away, his words cut short forever. In the camp, Harlan hosted councils with allied leaders discussing not just conquest but administration of new territories. He spared certain scholars for their expertise in engineering, incorporating their siege knowledge for future campaigns. Flashbacks to Reginald's earlier reign reveal missed opportunities. Envoys from threatened eastern lands begging alliance, dismissed, pleas from generals for military reforms, ignored in favor of lavish court entertainments. The daughters' individual paths diverge further in imagination. Eleanor, resilient, perhaps adapted in a distant commander's household, subtly influencing through intellect before fading into obscurity. Margaret, heartbroken, withered in isolation. Sophia's forced assimilation represents the ultimate erasure, becoming a stranger to her roots. The treasury scene expands with Harlan questioning specific hoards. Why this untouched silk while borders weakened? Why gems over grain for starving garrisons? Post-fall, survivors scattered. Some fled to southern cities, carrying tales that inspired resistance elsewhere, leading to later checks on steppe expansion. The feast over the bundled emperor includes toasts to fallen comrades and future glories, laughter contrasting the muffled struggles below. Ultimately, the story underscores timeless lessons. Arrogance blinds, preparation saves, and history remembers not just victors, but the preventable tragedies of the vanquished.